All right. All right. Second. Just waiting for this Rambam.org machine to work. Again, take two. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam Hilchos Nedarim prakim Zayin, Ches, and Tes. We are continuing on our amazing journey. Perek Zayin begins with scenarios where 2 people made a neder. Each one is prohibiting having hana one from the other, and the various consequences that this unique type of double opposite nedarim will cause. We're going to have, therefore, a lot more through halachas that will define the definition of hana'ah. What's going to happen when such a vow was made? One cannot have hana'ah from the other, but for a mitzvah reason, one needs to have hana'ah. You cannot have hana'ah from me, and that you, God forbid, is an ani, and I have food, and there is no chacham to be mata the nether. So we're going to learn certain legal loopholes that were dafka made, or we are being told to use whenever there is a mitzvah need to circumvent a neder. We're going to have various halachas that will again be based on what we learned yesterday, that paying down someone else's debt, even though, wow, that will be amazing, is not considered giving someone the type of hana'ah that's usher through making a neder. We're going to learn a very important rule regarding gifts. How do you define whether a gift is a gift or not? We're going to see how this plays into the Hilchos Nedarim. If I give you a gift, and when you receive the gift, you don't have enough ownership that will allow you to be magdish that item to God, is aray, it's not really a gift. And chevra, and many other detailed halachas when it comes to Nedarim. Perek Zayin has 17 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph, says the Rambam. Shnayim shenesra hanos kol echad mehem al chaverim. So you have 2 people, like we began in the intro. Each one made a vow which will prohibit one having hanor from the other, whether it's done through another, whether it's done through an oath. So let's go a couple of details. First of all, if one person finds a lost article of the other, they are allowed to return it. It's a mitzvah. Each one is obligated to do so. However, if you're living in a place where the minig is that the one who found and returned the lost article gets some sort of monetary schar, then the mitzvah has to be done. But here you're stuck in a catch-22. What's the stuck? Guys, we're speaking about a case. It's not a one-direction edit. It's a two-direction edit. I can't have enough from you. You can have enough from me. So to start to say, okay, even though normally schar is taken, here don't take schar. Then the one who normally would have paid is not paying. He's getting reward. Or if you will take the schar, then the recipient will get a reward. So there's a way out. What's the way out? It's the one who would have been out of pocket will go out of pocket. The one who did the returning won't get it. Where should the money go to? To the Bedek HaBayis. How great is that? Because like the Rambam says, and since we're speaking about each one has a neder of hana against the other, that's the way out. If something is owned by all the Jewish people, which means every Jew owns a very, very insignificant amount of it, here, even though I can't have enough from you, you can't have enough from me, it won't pose a problem. What is something that belongs to all the Jewish people? Temple Mount. May God bless us all to reclaim Har HaBayis, Va'azarais, temple, As they were built for this, especially for the oile l'regel, people came from bubbles, so they had these public wells or any other types of water reservoirs. Point is, since it belongs to everyone, which means you own even less than a pruta, so it doesn't pose a problem. However, but if there's something that only belongs to the current city, here we say your part is more significant. It's like having two partners. You're going, what belongs to the old city? The town's square, or the bathhouse that belongs to the city, or the Beis HaKnesses. The Teva is that little ark that they used to have in front of the Aron Kodesh. Belongs to the whole city. Hasfarim, Gavaldik. So what do you do now? In other words, since I own some of it and you own some of it, if I'm going to have enough from it, I'm having enough also from your part, from your chelik. I can't do that. So halacha gimel, the Kate said, each one of these two people, both of them, in other words, have to give over their part to the nasi as a gift, or doesn't have to be to the nasi. It means to any other person. How will that person acquire it? Since so you find some sort of king and write a document, and someone else should pick it up on behalf of the nasi. In other words, it comes out that I disown my chelik, you disown your chelik. So when both of us go into the merchatz, neither of us are benefiting one from the other. Or when they both walk into the Beis HaKnesses, to say the merchatz and Beis HaKnesses, right? Gashmis v'ruchnis, that's how we say it. In Birchas HaShachar, what bracha do we make first? First Hashi Yatzar, and then Alakai Neshama. It's the same type of bracha. One is for the body that's functioning, one is for the soul that's functioning. Gashmias before ruchnias. Eino nichnas l'reshus chaveri, elo l'reshus achayim. Sharei kol echad lehem nistalik mechalkei b'makim zeh. When a son noi, and was given noi means to the nasi, to someone else, b'matan. Okay, great. Halacha dalet. They are both partners in a courtyard. I can't have enough from you. You cannot have enough from me. So in the ideal world, which means if the chatzar, if the courtyard is large enough, this is the way people always used to live. There used to be homes that were opened into courtyards. So it was common, like today in LA, a duplex. Both of them have a share in the courtyard. This is the way these things work. If me and you are partners and either one of us want to divide the partnership, if it's possible to make a physical division without using the status, the shame of what we have. For example, we own jointly a chatzar. Halachically, a chatzar is only called a chatzar if it's 4 by 4 amos or larger. Another detail, if you have a chatzar going into a house, every balabayas automatically is the owner exclusively of the width of their Pesach going out dalad amos. Not dalad by dalad. If the opening is 2 amos, so 2 by 4. Then there's a topic, what happens if I have one house with many psachim? But first of all, there is, whatever the halacha is, there is a part of the chatzar that's designated to load and unload in front of the door. If what remains is 8 by 8 amos or more, which means that if you divide it in half, everyone gets at least 4 by 4, which means everyone gets a chelik of real estate that's still halachically called chatzar. Each partner can impose a chaluk. So if you can divide it, means if the chatzar is that large, then you have to divide it. Which is better, because like this, I'm b'chlal entering your chelik, and I made a vow not to have hana from you. However, if the chatzar is not large enough, so they have to remain joint owners of the chatzar. How am I going to get into my house? How are you going to get into your house? Here, that Rambam says, b'diavad, when there's no option, and all he needs to say is, I'm going through my part. And this is based on the shita of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, right, the Kavanaki, who says, yesh b'reidam. So I can argue, I know we own it jointly, but when I'm walking to my house through the yard, I'm walking through my chet. Meaning whether it has the size of a chalukah or not. Neither of them are allowed either to set up a mill or to raise chickens, which is, I just want you to know, that whenever me and you own something in partnership, any type of activity that very much dominates that environment. Think about it. Whoever raised chickens, they take over. Plus, or when you put it a chayim, there's constant tremors. Each one can stop the other one of doing it. And since I can stop it, why am I allowed to stop it? Because whenever you use it, you are using my chelik. If you're using my chelik, here there is a isur hana, one from the other. Neither of them are allowed to do it. And guys, giving permission doesn't help because there is a neder of a isur hana. How great is that? Halacha hey, two people are partners in this courtyard, and the neder, the neder echad mehem shelo yehena by hasheni. Here it's only a one-directional neder. So now koifen es hanoider limkar chelkoi. Wow. In other words, my vow imposes unnecessary hardship on the other. You have legitimate rights. I'm saying you can't have enough from me. That in itself is a violation of our partnership. I don't have the right in a partnership to make your life miserable. So what? And someone has to give. Who has to give? The one who brought about this unnecessary difficulty. Now, nada shelo yehena hu b'sheni. She makes a neder not upon you but upon me. In other words, your chelik is asur on me. First of all, I didn't impose any difficulties on you. The question is again, can I walk into my house? So here the din is, and guys, we're gonna understand pshat in hey only when the chatzir doesn't have din chalukah, like we said, aside of the chalakim that are designated for the openings, as we have in Bava Basra, the chatzir, right, doesn't have 8x8. There isn't 4x4 amas for each one. If you're machalik it, no one's property will be called halachically a chatzir. You're taking away the status, which is why you can't impose a division. So then again, b'diavad, we can realign. However, very good. If there's a third party, me and you guys own a partnership in this yard. Lamashal, each one of us has a house that goes into the yard. And someone from the market cannot have enough from either one of us. Again, like again, let's learn that we can say when we have to breda. Halacha zayin.
But he can't walk in front of the door of the one we made the dinner.
Very good. In other words, the chatzir doesn't include that chelik right in front of the doorway because that's already considered owned by that Baal HaPesach or Baal HaBais. Halacha zayin. Misha asara nos uma. Beinu uma is, guys, we're moving on. Another series of the halachas. A person makes a very broad vow. I won't have hana from that nation. He can buy something from them as long as he pays even more than the market price. You know why? That's not called hana. You overpaid a little bit. Or if you sell to them, as long as you sell for a little bit less than the market value, that means that you lost by selling to them, even though you can argue, listen, if you wouldn't need the money, you wouldn't sell it. But we don't look at it that way. If you got the bad side of the deal, it means halachically you did not get hana. You got money, so what? You gave up your item. You had something that you gave them. Whenever my father would sell his merchandise and the guy didn't pay, he would take it back. It would be a simchas Torah. He would be happy. He says, I get to sell it twice. In fact, I only get paid once. Halavai, he didn't look at that. I sold it once and I sold the same thing. All right. Asad. So asad hana asay aleim. If the opposite, if he made a neder saying that you guys, you nation, cannot have hana from me. So listen, you think they're going to make a bad deal? If they will. If they, make the bad deal, meaning that they always lose out, so they're not benefiting from him. Now one can make an argument. Why do you make exeda that if you're going to have any interaction, you might end up making a good deal? In this case, when you made an neder against the whole ummah, it's very difficult to walk away from an entire nation. I want to have enough from Americans. Shver. The aim goes to the kan shelo yimkor because shema zayde shema yikach. Sharei lo nodar me ish echad kenei shenigzor olav and you can say, make exeda, don't do dealings with one individual and do dealings with another individual. Here was such a broad vow. That's only, in other words, when you're making that against one person, do a business with another person, but with the whole nation. Okay, and like we mentioned, against a whole nation, I'm not allowed to. I cannot have hana from none of you nation people, since we don't make exeda. So listen to this, guys. He's allowed to lend something to them. He cannot have hana from them. They can have hana from him. So he can lend something to them. He can borrow money. What's the chiddush? We don't make exeda. If I lend to them, they might lend back to him. That will be us. We don't do that. And the point is that when you make a neder against the whole ummah, gzedas are not made. Keep your vow, but anything that's in the direction of they're having hana from you, you are allowed to do. A guy makes a double vow, and guys, I have the right to do so. Like we learned already yesterday. No, it's ein adam oisa davar she'ena shaloi, but I can prohibit my on you. So I'm making about, I'm not going to have hana from you guys, from you nation, and none of you from your nation, I'm asking my stuff on you. It works. Now, no way is okay. Understand what you're going to undersell, you're going to oversell. Whoever will get the better deal is going to be getting hana. Lo yisav yitin iman. V'chein heim lo yisav lo yitnu imay. Again, no matter which way you do it, one side benefits. Halachates. Again, there's a chiddush. We don't say, do it exact. It doesn't work that way. Someone is going to be the one that has halachic hana. Halacha 9. This is already not an entire nation. I may not benefit from none of the b'nei ha'ir. B'nei ha'ir in English is the inhabitants of a city. Now, we had this yesterday. If I want to be mashil my neder, if I want to be matir my neder, can I use a chacham from the city? Why is that, my friends? Because you didn't prohibit hana from a whole nation to say, you're not going to go to the moon. I get that. Go to another city. You don't have to go to a chacham of this city. If you went, and since Taka, you have to have a Pesach, but it's oikirit l'mafreya, then it's a good she'el. The im nishol lihitaloi, hanei nitrei mutar, kamoisha b'yana. Guys, we had this in Pedig Dalet yesterday. Now, halacha yud. Misha asar hanos brias olaf. I love these halachas, guys. Mamash, we're defining through this derech hana. Listen to this, chevra. I am not allowed to benefit from no other people. From people. Someone else in the Holy Land is keeping what God wants for everyone to keep there, which is to leave leket. We'll speak about that when we get there. To leave shikha, to leave peya, to leave maisur ani. Maisur ani, dafke, when it's left in the goyden, which is ideally where it should be left. Guys, so God means that all of the chiyuvim of trumas or maisrus is when the product is finished. There's also something called re'iyas penei habayis, which is not relevant when you are going to be selling it from your sada. Whenever the product is finished, which means when you put everything in a pile and you smooth the pile, that's called the garain, then it's chal, the chiyuv of trumas or maisrus. Now let me ask you a question. Which ani gets to get the maiser ani in the 3rd and the 6th year? It's an amazing thing. If the balabas did the right thing, which is he left it in the sada, he doesn't even get the right to choose which ani to give it to. The aniyim go to the garden, and they take from that maiser ani pile. If the person, for right or wrong, brought the maiser ani in his home, even though he's not ganvening it, God forbid, then he has the right to choose which ani to give it to. So that will be a big difference only regarding maiser ani. This guy's hamaschalik begronis only goes to the maiser ani. So the din is you can pick it up from the field. Why can't you pick it up from the field? I may not benefit from people. You know you're not benefiting from people. You know who you're benefiting from? God Almighty. When a yid leaves leket and the poor take the leket, who gave the leket? The Eibishter. There was no balabatishkeit of the owner. The B'tei Chabais goes on Ma'aser Ani because since he takes it to his house, then the balabas has the right to give it to whoever he wants, as we'll learn in these dinim. This is called, he has the Toivas Hana'am, which also means in this halacha, it's going to be hard to work out. Sometimes we're not going to say this logic, even over here in Nindanim. Here we're going to say it's not mamish like, let me use the word hefker. it's belonging to the Oibishter. But how the terms in Allah is it's hefker. If it's in the field, it's called hefker. I'm not having hana from people. Even though it used to belong to you, you were the balabas. Once you left the shikha, now it's mufkar. My Sarani Babais is not hefker. Now, the im amar, if the isur hana against others was kohanim elu v'levim elu, he specified kohanim elevim. It's very interesting. Then they cannot take it even from him. They cannot take his truma. They cannot take his meiser. It's from Hashem, because by truma so meiser, no Rabbi Yaakov, you always get to choose who you give it to. Your machalik beganon is not like a shikha and meiser ani there. It fits so far so good. And the yitin truma meiser look anal v'macherim. If who adin b'matnois aniyim im ho aniyim, I think that's what it means. Or other matnois aniyim, not meiser. In other words, whenever you have the right, let's say today, meiser ksaf, example. Yeah, you're going to give meiser, but you get to choose who you give it to. So then that means you have some balabatashkeit, even though the recipient is getting it from God. You cannot give it to people who cannot benefit from you. Now, me shohoisan asa yasuri al chaverim. Speaking about, do we make legal loopholes? It's not possible to have a judicial system where people don't make loopholes. It's not shaykh. If you know the law. So the question is, do we advocate doing so? Sometimes we advocate doing so. Not me, God forbid, Chazal. So here's a great case. A guy, imagine, Shimon cannot have anah from Reuven. Was tut men if Reuven has food and Shimon is starving? You tell me, and there's no chacham. There has to be a way. And there is a way. What do? Reuven goes to a storekeeper and he makes an announcement. Ish ploini asr b'hanu yasi. Shimon cannot benefit from me. Oh, I don't know what to do. This is called indirect remes. We have this sometimes by Amir al-Akum. Generally not. People abuse that. He's maramis to the Chenveni, lay out money to Shimon, which means who will owe money to the Chenveni? Shimon. What did we learn yesterday? That paying down your debt is not called in this context giving you hana'ah, even though, das balabatim would be otherwise. So that's what you do. If the storekeeper gives Shimon the food and Shimon and the storekeeper comes and collects the money from the Reuven, that's fine. Why? Guys, beautiful. Paying someone else's debt in the context of Isur Nedesh, Isur Hana, is not called Mahana. Other similar cases. Or Gidei, no, work needs to get done. So Shimon needs work to be done on this property. Shimon has no means to do it. Reuven wants to help him, but Reuven is bound by a vow. So the same thing, he's meramis. He goes to workers and he says, "Ish plenty asr b'hana yasi." I don't know how to help him. I wish I can help him. And they understood that remes, and they went and they built for him and they made for him. Now Reuven can go and pay the workers. Why? Now this ending is both for Yud Gimel and for Yud Beis, like we learned yesterday. Halacha Yud Dalid. Two people were traveling together. All right. Who are the two people? This is the one-way neder. So Reuven and Shimon. Let's say again, Shimon cannot have anah from Reuven, and they're traveling together. Now what? There's no chenveni here. And Reuven has food and Shimon doesn't. How do you get the food over to Shimon? It's not only them. There's a third party. You're giving it to a third party as a gift. It belongs to Levi. Now let's go even better. There is no Levi. There is no Yehud. It's just these two chachamim. He's allowed to put it on a seller. No kinyan needs to be made. I like the thumb from Keva. No kinyan has to be made because we learned, when was it, yesterday or 2 days ago, the dinam of hefker. I think it was Sunday, right? The concept of hefker. The Rambam put hefker in the Hilchos Nadarim. That through a verbal declaration you can disown something. And you say, by the way, what did we also learn, Danny? You have to make hefker midoy raisa. The Rambam says in front of one. At least you have the one. The Rosh says, and midrabanan in front of three. Here the Rabbanan gave up their din. No, we said the Rosh said by yourself. The Rambam says in front of one. Here, there's one.
Really not going to work for all of these.
Yes, but we try to cover up the loophole as much as, at least to give it as a gift. Here, your mamash, you're putting it down. You're saying it's mufkar. Guys, this is beautiful. This is a Mashiach dik Allah. In other words, can we rely? Yeah, if there's a loophole, when someone else is starving, then rely on Allah. If I'm the one that's starving, don't rely on a loophole. When the other one needs your help. Halachat as well.
Maybe that was the challenge of Rakan, because
he couldn't give her. That's very good. So Rabbi Yaakov is saying, what was the ma'aseh with Rabbi Akiva? That the Shver made the vow in anger that his daughter should not have enough from her. And they starved. I mean, Rachel, Rabbi Akiva's wife, they went through terrible hardship. Had he known, as he went to Rabbi Akiva to be mataneder. Had he known.
No, he owned everything. It could be that he owned everything.
No, he could have put it down. He could have been mafkid. He didn't know that. What's the irony is that he was angry that Rabbi Akiva said Amaretz. That called a place, he was not Amaretz. You can argue that way. The people. Okay, right. Halachat as well. Be careful. Nasan la'echad matana with no disrespect. The old Gavaldik Yidin old Tzadikim Gemara. Nasan la'echad matana v'amarloi. Listen to this. Harei suuda hazu nusunu lach b'matana. If, however, you give your chaver the ganze feast. No, it was the guys Reuven and Shimon. Shimon cannot have enough from Reuven. How broad can you use this loophole? Imagine this. I'm gonna have a suuda. I'm going to be mafker my whole suuda shuki. My whole thing is given to Levi, and therefore, but I'm saying when I'm giving it to Levi, in order for Shimon to be able, Shimon cannot have enough from me, let him come and eat. Guys, that's too much.
Because they're sitting together, that's why?
Because no one is mafker the whole suuda. No one, I think because it's too much. You're giving too much.
If you mafker the suuda, now it's hefker, you could still...
Oh, for sure. Let me say the words. The words is that it's muchrach. It's too obvious that it's not a gematana gemura.
He's explicitly saying so that this guy can come
and I think it's also because it's a whole feast. No one is matriach. And he loses this. No one does that. Even if he doesn't say when he gives the gift in order for Shimon to be able to come. But after he gives it to Levi as a gift, he says, that's called a chiach soifa yal tchilasai. But why? I'll tell you why. Because it's a big su'udah. It's because it's a too big. People don't give such a big gift. We're speaking about this person that Nebuch made a neder against his father. That's it. The size of the meal is my chachas olav shalei gomar lahaknis loy.
So you're saying like this kind of harama would
too much. There is a limit to this harama. Very good. Halacha tazay. Okay. Kol matana. So let's define this more. In other words, when do we say that my gift is a gift? When is my gift not a gift? Don't forget, if my gift to you is a gift to you, even though Reuven cannot have enough from me, Reuven can have enough from you. So he says a very good rule. Whenever the current owner is able to be magdish it all to God, is that right? That he owns it. In this case, before, when I made a meal and I want to invite Shimon, so I'm giving the meal to you, if you would be magdish the whole su'udah, it would not be hagdish. Because you don't really own it. So that's the halacha design. Kol matana. Any recipient of a gift, if the owner, the current owner says, I'm magdish it, if halacha says you don't own it enough to completely disown it by giving it to hegdish, you know what that means? It means it's not fully yours. It means it remains from the original owner. It's not hefker. And if someone cannot have hana from the original owner, this type of gift will be ineffective. However, I give you a gift, almanas, let me add the words la'achar. We have this many times in the Gemara. So the din is harei. Now, guys, this is almanas. Almanas means if you don't eventually give it to the achar, which will happen if you're magdash it l'shamayim, then you will never coin it. Harei ze ha'achar kana be'esh yakna lo yorisha. Ve'im lo yikna lo yorisha lo iso ha'achar lo kana lo yorisha v'lo sheni. In other words, any guys, just remember rule, any matana al tanai, batla tanai, but lahamatana. And if you remember, by Tanoim, the words almanas b'chlal is not in Cain. Almanas is lemafreya retroactive. Point is, and therefore, in such a case, if I give it to you, almanas to give it to someone else. Now, people wonder about matana almanas lahachzer. Matana almanas lahachzer is considered, and that's the big sugi here. We don't have enough time, but that's a very gewaldige topic to discuss. That's a beautiful sugi. Matana almanas lahachzer, we say, right, and the midday rice, I have to own the dalat minim, right? Look, and I give it to you, almanas, you give it back to me. Which means if you would be magdashit, wouldn't be hegdish, because if you would be magdashit, you would not be able to give it back to me, which means it was never yours. Here we're not saying that. Okay, halacha yud zayin. Let's leave that just the topic open. Halacha yud zayin, the final halacha. Mi shenesra hana asay al ba'al bitoy. Rachmana litzlan. All right, a guy says that you aid him, you cannot have anah from me. And now to add salt to the injury, he wants to give a gift to his daughter, but not to aid him. Oh, this is B'chal Hilchas issues. We learned that in Hilchas issues that a person can give a gift to a married woman. Almanas, the husband doesn't have any balabata. But what do we call that property? Do you remember? Generally, a woman who gets property, who gets something after she got married, will by default be nechsam aloik. Nechsam aloik means that even though during the marriage it belongs to her, but during the marriage the husband can have the user fruit. And there's a netted that against the Adam, he can't even have user fruit. Okay. And the who writes the losses will be as exclusively for what she desires and not the hobby. When he gives her that gift, he has to tell her, then he has to add. No, it's not enough to say to you, because to you, shkoyach, the husband and the wife have the same yad. ובלבד שלא יהיה לבעלך בהם רשוס, אלא יהיו למה שאת מייסנס לפיך, או למה שתלבשי וכיוצא בזה. Furthermore, אפילו מלמנה שאין לבעלך בהם רשוס, אלא מה שתעשי בם, das is good, that's good enough. לכאן הבא, למה שתרצה תעשה בהם. However, what will not be good enough, אבל נעשן למתנה. If he only says these words, in other words, he's not adding not him, but yes, you. You do what you want. Get dressed. He didn't say what she could. He only said, not him. The Lord Pedish that the gift should be for something. He only spoke the negative and not the positive. Even if the positive would be very general, but he didn't even say the general. You get it then? He just says, not the husband. Yeah. What will happen? So it's going to be nechsem aloik. Taka, not the husband, but during the marriage, you can't use that money. You have to buy something, and the husband will have user fruit. And that's going to be usher because there's a nether against him. And therefore, whatever is usher, so if a person does such a thing, aside of him needing to go see a good doctor, the only way he can give a gift to his daughter is not only by saying almanas that the husband doesn't have a shus in it, he has to say, and also, and you do whatever you want.
If it doesn't specify that,
then it becomes nechsam aloik property, which means it be'emes belongs to her, but during the marriage, she can't even use the money. You have to buy something that has user fruit, and during the marriage, she has the user fruit, and that's going to be against it.
He's not allowed to benefit from it.
That's why you can't give such a gift. All right, Chevre Perek Ches. Perek Ches, even though when we said yesterday, the Rambam spoke about the 4 Nidarim, one of them was Nidrei Shagogos. I said the Rambam didn't specify what that is, but first of all, we're going to dig in the following. These are Gavaldik halachas. That when a person makes a neder and he specifies a stipulation, as we'll see during the neder, it automatically means that the neder is dependent on that stipulation, meaning, Shuki, when that stipulation falls to the side, the neder becomes nullified going forward. And you don't even need a she'ela l'chacham. And then we're going to have a concept which is even more, that if a neder was made based on a false premise, that's called neder shegagos, then l'chatchila there was no neder. If you discover that when he says, my wife, you cannot have enough from me because you did X, Y, and Z. Then we discovered she never did X, Y, and Z. There was never a neder to begin with. We're going to have in this pedic the klal neder shehutar mitzasei hutar koloi. Yesterday we learned neder sheyatsa michlaloi. Here now we're going to have shehutar mitzasei. We'll see what that means, hutar koloi. And the most important rule we're going to learn in pedic ches is that there's a paradox by nedarim. On one hand, we said it has to be moitza sefosech. Then we said it has to be pivali b'shavin, but you have to say a neder. What happens if a person says a word that if you follow the strict letter of the word, it would mean A. If you would follow the intent, you can touch the intent in the word, and we do the letter. We follow the intent and not the word. Remember in yeshiva, many people learn Rashi Tosfos, certain general understandings of different Rishonim. Some of them follow the exact words of the Gemara. Some of them follow the spirit, as long as it fits in the words. Are you doichik the idea, or are you going to be doichik the words? Which one are you going to push? And we're going to see that by Nadarim, we follow the intent and not the literal meaning, as long can't be completely different than the words, because then it's not, there's no piv. But if you can say that those words meant the intent, that will be the neder and not the literal meaning of the words. Let's begin. Perek Ches has 14 halachas. Beginning with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam, this is both by a neder or by an oath, vow or oath, upedish, and he says clearly, while he's making the neder, that what? That bishas nidroi, that davar shenadar nishba bigloloi. He says why. Let me say, he makes a stipulation. I'll give you an example, David. You'll give me as I look. It's as if he said almanas, and therefore, for example, a guy says like this. This is both a neder or a shvur. I will not marry that woman. He makes a vow. Why? He says why. He gave a reason. Because her father is a bad dude. Shaviora. Or I make a neder not to enter this house because there is a kalavra that lives in the house. And you know what? When the vow was made, emes, the father was bad, the dog was bad. What happens if at any point in the future the father passed away or the dog passed away? This is gavaldik. No, the neder was chal. But since you gave the reason, we automatically say that when the reason goes away, the neder goes away without needing to go in front of the chacham. Mesu, or better, in the case of the father did tshuva, a dog cannot do tshuva. The father can do tshuva, harei zemuter. Why? Because shezeh commission other than nishma v'amar shaliyasei shaplenis shaliyakon z'bayzeh ele im kain nistalik. It's as if he said, I won't do it until when the damage goes away. Even though he never said that, which is great. Now, guys, this means halacha aleph and beis, the neder was chal, and it goes away when the reason goes away. Now the Rambam is going to give a scenario called Midrash Gagois, where the reason that you gave was never true, which you made the neder based on a erroneous assumption. Here, the neder to begin with is not going to be chal.
How is this different than exaggerations?
It's not that different. Okay, it's different. This is Nidrei Shagogis. That will be the contrast. Nidrei Shagogis is lechatchila not chal. Perek Ches is when the stipulation goes away, the neder goes away. What's when not chal? Aval hanoider anishba any noise to polainis, or she's ugly. Then you discover she's not ugly. Who is going to define that? I have no idea. Or that's easier. I'm not marrying her ashchoira. Then you discover Lavana. Be careful, don't translate this in English. On YouTube, live. Ktsara. He says, I'm making a vow not to marry her because she's short. Turns out that she's tall. Again, I don't know how you define this, because these are really, who's determining that? But in the case where it's so determined, I'm making a vow my wife cannot have enough for me because she stole my wallet. In America, the minig is it's not your wallet. It was a different time. There it was like your wallet. Or that sheikh says, Bini. When a married man said, my son right now, he needs help. Not my son, it's our son. It's our wallet. But that's today. That was then. She hit my son. And the noida shalai. Then you discovered the whole, it never happened. Here we say, not that it goes to the side. From the beginning, it's called mutter. That's called neder toes, guys. And nidrei shoygigin means the same thing. That's what it means. The place neder toes. That to begin with, right? That was one of the chapters we had yesterday. Nidrei anasim, nidrei shkogis, nidrei havai, nidrei zeirusim. Those were the four nedarim that are mutter to begin with. Halacha gimel, guys, is not like halacha aleph and beis. Shaharei hasiba shebachol another lohei mitzuya v'toyasai. It's in halacha aleph and beis. The neder was chal. The kalav was a kalavra. The chiddush there is that even though the neder went into effect, when the kel of Ra dies, when the father Ra does tshuva, then the neder goes away. You see the difference. Halacha dal. That are eating te'enim, let's go further in this whole false presumption, erroneous presumption. And they're eating te'enim, they're eating figs, and he's upset. They're eating his figs. So he makes a vow. Listen to these words. Harei hein kulcham, harei hein alem, harei hein aleichem karmen. My figs are upon you. Right? He couldn't say asadi. He was matfiz b'davar hanadu. They can't have enough. Then he comes closer and he sees that you know who was there? His father and his brother. He never would have made the vow against his family. He only did it because he thought they were strangers. You don't have to be matin. Now let's expand this. Even though he didn't say it, it's not like shegon vakisi, sheik sabani. Hadeze kimi sheperash. Shahadover moichiach shaloi asar aleim el lepnei shoy vedat shem zorim. Now, Allah hey, Misha Nadra Nishbam. But then something comes into the world. Something happens later that when you did not make a mistake when you made it, later the mistake came into the world. Now you got to nullify it. For example, I cannot benefit from so-and-so. I cannot enter that specific location. Later, after you made the vow, later the guy becomes a scribe, which is something that his services you need. Later, that place became designated as a Beis HaKnesses. Even though the person says, had I known that this person would have been a scribe or that this place would have been a Beis HaKnesses, I never would have made the nether or the shua. That's a beautiful Pesach that you make in front of a Beis Din or in front of a Chacham. But it doesn't happen automatically. Guys, this is not a ta'os. This is what we learned. There's something called Hataras Shvuos. Hataras Nadarim, fine, but not automatically. Now let's go even further. We mentioned this once yesterday in between the lines. Now it's explicit. Any vow that even only a portion of it became mutard, whether it became mutard because you were matter the neder or like our cases, automatically the whole neder falls apart. And the same thing is with an oath. For example, let's go back to the same case of Allah Chadal. You have a fig orchard. You see people in your fig orchard eating your figs. And you say, Harei hein aleichem karban. When you get near them, unlike halacha dalid was, you know who you saw? Your father and your brother, no one else. Here, when you got close, you saw your father and other people. Guys, the other people had no right to eat your figs. You did want to make the neder to the other people. The only one you would have excluded is father. But father is excluded because it was a neder betos. So the part, you said one general word, right? You said aleichem karban. So now we say why is it because it was noilad later. Here was from the beginning. Like we said, had I known, I would have said, listen to the words. If he's silent, the whole neder falls apart. Now, if this person then reacts by saying, even if he says, had I known, I would have said, ploini uploini yasurin. Now he sees who they are. Va'avi mutar. But he didn't say that, correct? So then, kula mutarim. However, again, if he's silent, the whole neder falls apart. But if after he sees who they are, he says, Ili hayisi yodea sha'avi beinechem, hayisi oimer. Guys, here it's not plenty or plenty. But here he would have repeated the same words, which is kulchem asurim. He would have repeated the same words and then he would have added. He didn't do that, but he would have done it. And he's saying he would have done it. Chutz ma'avi. Now, I call him asurim chutz ma'aviv. Sha'arei gili dati shaloi hitin mixas neder. He's not being mati mixas neder. What were the words of the neder? Kulchem, aleichem. What would he have said now? Also kulchem. Even though he's excluding his father. And therefore, that's the key, the word kulchem, not plenty or plenty. Here, the aviv muter and kulchem asurim. Because wine is bad for the digestive system. And they tell them, no, it's a toast. They tell him wine is great for your digestion. So if he's quiet, guys, then that is neufel. But if he says, Afilu Amar Ilo Yisi De Yisi Omer Chadish Aser Vayoshin Muter. Right? He's not repeating the words of the Neder. Not all lines. He's specifying Mamish. It's like Pliny or Pliny. Then Muter Vayoshin or Chadish. Why? Because some of it was a toes. Neder Shutam Exasi Hutar Kulai. But if he says, I would have repeated the same words. Other than Meyushan, Tak and Meyushan falls apart. That's Neder Patos. But the other ones are also Royin, guys, this is very powerful halachas. Royin, the bottom shabiglala nishba another. We have to understand why he made the neder. The loimdin mehen le'ezadavar neschaven, and we can see many times we know his intention, and then we only follow the intent and not by the literal meaning of the words. Our Rosh Yeshiva here in LA, the Rosh Yeshiva doesn't like this. That when he learns, that was his brilliance. He always follows the words. He hated when people had a good idea, and then they squeezed it into the words. It's not what it says. He would always go Molmata Lamayli. You have to be a much greater scholar to read the words, and from that, build a building. Not build a building in your brain and stick it into the words. By a neder, we don't go that way. By neder, we go after your intent. Now, I mentioned, guys, just intent is garnished. You have to have hoitzos fasa. But we're speaking about cases where your word could be interpreted two ways. We never follow the literal if we know what your intent is. Ketza. If a guy's carrying, schlepping a load, and he's schwitzing, and when you schwitz while you are carrying wool or linen, there's a unique type of not good odor. And it bothers you, the bad odor, and you make a shvua or a neder. These are the words that you said. Now, God, what does the word yala mean? Yala can also mean not to wear clothing made out of wool. You didn't say, I'm not going to carry a load. What we say, no, yala, we will limit the word yala. By the way, in other words, because why did you make the vow? Because since you were schlepping a big bundle, it was making you sweat. If you don't schlep, you're not going to sweat. Another, because tzemer sometimes is very rough, not today's tzemer. I'm from the Shmata business world. Tzemer today can be beautiful. Tzemer then was much rougher. And the guy was uncomfortable. The Nishba, you know that, again, he said a very general statement. My friends, only Asr Lilbosh, but you can carry it, because if I am wearing a nice cotton shirt and I have tzemer in a peckle, and I'm putting it over my shoulder, it's not making my back uncomfortable. It's not touching my skin. And furthermore, if there are woolen spreads that are not clothing, they won't be rough on my skin. The guy didn't say the word beged. We follow intent and not the literal meaning of the words. Now you have to understand how much chaos this will create. But Rambam is giving examples where it's very clear. The truth is, Klapa Shema Egali. God knows the truth. But this is such a big yisoid in a dar. Halacha 9. They're trying to get him to marry his relatives. And he said, I don't want to marry her. And they're insisting, by typical Shatchanim, and another Nishba, so he makes a vow, that woman can never, ever benefit from me. What did he mean? You know what he meant? He meant that if I marry her, she should not be allowed to benefit from me. So therefore, we can't get married. He didn't mean that this relative, why would a person ask the relative having a no? Oh, you see the intent. Or, and after he divorces her, Nishba, I know that she can never have benefit from me. Go try that in a California court of law. First day, she owns more than you own. Nevertheless, he made a issues. In other words, he's trying to. What did we say? Why do people make vows and oaths? Because I have my nefesh Bahamas, and my nefesh Bahamas is real, and I have to know how to contend with it. So one way is, if I bind myself against a certain thing, it's going to give me the koyach not to go there. This guy knows he might remarry her. I'm going to kill myself if I'll remarry her. That's not the way Yidden speak. The way Yidden speak is, I'm making a neder that she can never have anah from me. But we know he only means that if I'll remarry her, she can't have anah. Which, by the way, that would mean he can't marry her. because he's chayiv to give her mezainis. If you're going into a marriage where the wife cannot be mahana from you, then there's no marriage. She said, "Etzloi, come and eat with me." And the other guy says, "I don't want to." I swear that I won't even have a drop of this. Yeah, they say, all you meant was I'm making an oath for you to see that I cannot eat this meal. I'm making an oath that I won't eat from this seudah. Even though you didn't say those words, we interpret your intent in the words that you made. A person takes an oath or a vow. That's what we're talking about. And he says, guys, these are the words. I will never enter your house. I will never buy your field. Whether he said that the nether now this home, this field no longer belongs to that person, right? Shuki, I didn't say this house. I said your house. Now it's not your house. You get it? You know, you can argue otherwise, but this is the intent. However, if he says or this sada zu, I will never buy, that's different. Guys, in other words, don't forget, by a neder, you have to go after what the guy says. So everything that we learned until now, that we follow intent and not the literal meaning, is only if your intent can be fartaich in the words that you said. We cannot make your intent go against the words you said. I'm sorry, this house means this house. When you say to your house, it can make sense. In other words, I can't enter your house means this house when it's yours. You can fartaich.
What's the difference when it says Bein and Shua in this case?
No difference. This is such a classic. Please, I want to borrow your cow. And the balabas tells him, oh, it's not available. And I know it's available, or I think that I know it's available, and I'm very angry at you. And one of the ways that one person expresses their anger is nishba oy nadar ba'amar sadi eina chodesh. But I know what? I'll never use your cow again. But that's the way people react. You're not helping me. I will never benefit from your cow. Now, like this. If this person normally does, v'yadi doesn't mean you don't plow with your hands. It means if you're the guy, some people, beautiful, you own a business and you work the business. If the balabala sada is the one that does the plowing, then when he made that neder, it was only hu asan. But other people, guys, he said, sadi, eina chodesh bala oilam. His intent was, you don't want to help me? I will never benefit from you. He meant not my field. But in other words, if he never worked himself, there's always people doing the work, then you can't interpret it in, because at the end of the day, he said, Sadi ein chodesh bala oilam. V'chol adam asurim. Hu v'chol adam asurim. V'chein chalcha is one of them. Gaval, kalach yugim. Misha nishba in other shisa ish. Guy makes an oath or a vow that I'll marry a woman. Just again, guys, remember, nedarim are always in the negative. Chazal always speak about, like, I make a neder to marry a woman. A person says that if I won't marry a woman, then all of this and that and the other is asurim olay. But there's a way how to use a neder to bind yourself to do something. Now, you didn't say to which one. This is a guy who has a commitment issue. So he needs help. Again, people make nedarim to bind themselves. He dates. He's about to propose. He can't propose. So the guy makes a neder. I am making a neder. I'm getting married. Or the guy who every time he comes to buy the house, takes a look at the mortgage payment at the last second, he goes nuts. So he wants to bind himself to do the deed, to buy the house, or to go on a trip, or to go on or to go on a boat. It was very dangerous. It was I know I got to do it. I know me. There's something in me that stops me. So I'm trying to force myself to do it. And he made that vow. What did he mean? When a guy says, I swear I'm going to marry a woman, does it mean that the first shidduch that comes up he has to marry? That's the question. No, that's not what he intended. He intended that the first one that's shaykh to me, I'm going to marry. Now you can argue then this guy will never get married. Fine. But you can interpret that in his words.
What someone defines as shaykh.
Very good. Guys, whoever's in shidduchim, that's the way. She's a wonderful, but not shaykh. I love it. Yeah, this shaykh. Everyone speaks Lashon Kodesh. You don't say they mean they have to do it right away. No. It has to be hagun. Umaisa be'isha. How many times the Rambam says maisa is like in very rare. So there was a story here. He says there was a woman. She made a neder. She called me. She eat ba'oisa. Whoever will ask her for marriage, she's going to agree to get married. What happened right away? People that were not hagunim la. And she wanted to know whether she's bound. The Chachamim says no. Because we understand why do people know why do people make that vow? They make the vow because even when they find the right person, they get cold feet. Some people get cold feet before doing something significant. So that's what the person meant, and not anyone.
So this makes them clear if they find the right person?
Yes. But this is all based on this big cloud that we follow intent and not the literal meaning of the words. This is a big cloud. Even though it has to fit into your words, but we squeeze it into your words. That's what you meant. Halacha Yudal. Final halacha in this page. I want you to get something from me. So I'm making some sort of vow. Let me say like this. I'm making a vow that I will never have hana from you if you won't take for your son from me a kor shel chitim. Or you're not going to take for your son 2 bottles of wine. I want to give you something. I'm trying to bind you receiving a gift through a neder or a shvur. You know what he can say? The person can say, it's as if I took it. And why is that good enough? Because you wanted to give me kavod. You know what gives a person kavod? When I give you a kavod, David, one way of giving you a kavod is when I give something to you. So I gave you honor. You being able to say, I thank you, but I'm going to take a pass. It's also giving you kavod. You're becoming more mechubed. People say, wow, look at that person. He doesn't even want to take a gift. He's humble also. So I set up a scenario. But I set up a scenario which allows that person to be even more mechubed bein abriyos. So that's like the kavan of the neder. I just wanted to give you something. I want you to give something to my son. I'm allowed to circumvent the nether without a she'elas char. It's as if I received. Because that's the intent of the nether, is for me to get something. When a person has a gift, think about it. When someone, look at the cover that you get. I'm moichel. Wow. I'm moichel. I'm avater. How beautiful. Okay. Halacha test, Pedic test. I mean, the final Pedic today, it's the longest, but it's the easiest. It's going to be one thing, almost one thing. In other words, many times semantics are that important in the Torah. What does this word mean? You have to find that word in Tanakh, not by Nedarim. By Nedarim is how do people use that word, and that can change. Not Torah doesn't change, but again, since it's about moitzes sefasecham, it's almost the opposite of what we learned at the end of the last chapter. Oh, it's not about intent. Here, this word means this, and the Rambam is going to give a whole series of words and examples to this effect. Pedic Tes has 23 halachas. Halacha Aleph says that Rambam bin Nedarim haloich achar loshin b'nei adam, and that changes only ba'isa makim, only ba'isa loshin. Ba'isa loshin can even mean there's English, there's American English, there's British English, there's this English, is that English. In other words, what does it mean in this place, in this language, and in that time? When you made the neder or when you made the oath. That's the whole chapter. Let's go. Ketzad, for example, not a nishba. And you use the words, min ha-mevushel. I won't partake of mevushel. What's cooked food? Ask Tzemach. So he's like this. That mevushel even means something that's roasted. It's included in the mevushel or shalok, boiled. Just to know, boiled shlika means more than usual. Overly boiled. So then, if that's what it means, then you can't have not mevushel, not soloi, and not shalok. If that's all that word is used for in this location, simple. Smoked food. Smoked food is already further removed. But if people use the word smoked, mevushal, if mevushal includes smoked, okay, then it's included. What about something that's cooked b'chamit tveri? We learned in Milchus Shabbos, right? The whole sugya that chamit tveri is not called toldos eish. It's not toldos eish, which is why midoi raisa, cooking b'chamit tveri and midoi raisa is not a problem. So again, what is mevushal?
In the sun also.
Cooking in the sun. In other words, I don't care now. Don't compare this to Hilchas Shabbos. It's how do people use the word bishul? What do they include? What do they exclude? The chayotze behem, hoyelchem boy, only achal haloshim. But what's more important is in this place. This is subjective. Halacha beitz. Not that nishma min hamoliach, I won't partake of salted foods. So in darkam likra meliach l'chol hamaluchin, anything that's salted that is also l'chol hamaluch. Everything has sodium today, yeah. Go starve. You can't eat anything. But if only dog maliach, then the only thing you can have is a dog maliach. Not that now we're going into the next pickled foods. I know kavush means soaking, but just the word kavush in Allah is normally used when you pickle something, so you soak it in whatever, in vinegar. So im darkam likra is kavush chala kavush is also markoil. The im ain darkam likra is kavush eloli yara kavush not pickled vegetables. That was probably the most common thing. Today in this galgal hadvarim, and what do we have? We have the pickle. It's a vegetable. That's the pickled.
Kavush is dafke with vinegar, or it could be salt water.
It can be anything. It's samach. So then, I take it back. The answer for samach question is depends how people use that word. It's important. I know that in Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Kashrus, we learn both. No, it has to do with how people use the word. Also elaba kavush al yarak. Now it's going to get juicy. What happens if there's a machlekes in this place? Machlekes is not a machlekes. People use the words differently. So what you know what you don't do? And if in this place, some like this, some like that, this is called a suffix. What's the din of a suffix? I'll give you the general rule. If it's an isur doirais, you got to be machmir. It's a chiv dorais, a chayv malchus. Now you're not going to get malchus. You're never going to get malchus if there's a suffix if you violate it, but you're not allowed to violate.
At some point, you're going to be going after the road. In other words,
wait. I think he's going to say, yeah. It mix us means not 50-50, but more or less 50-50. Yeah, there's not going to be correction. There's not going to be a ruba de ruba, because one idiot uses that word that way. We're not going to go that way. I think that Rambam is going to write a halacha to this soon. I think. So you can't do it. But on the other hand, if you did it, you're not going to be chayv malchus. Kate said, for example, guys, the normal oil that was used to see throughout is shemen zayis. That's oil. But you can also make from sesame seed, you can make oil. I know today we're living in a new world. Today, everything has oil and chanami. They didn't have it then. So most people, right, if you live in a place where they actually also use sesame seed oil. V'roiv shuki, v'roiv anshe amokim ein koiden shemen stam el shemen zayis. And whenever they speak about shemen shumshemin, they spell it out. They say sesame seed oil. However, umiyutan koiden as afle shemen shumshemin shemen stam. That will be a case of halacha daled. And you say, I'm making a net that I'm not going to have shemen. Also mishnayim. The ain't no like shemen shumshemin. Now, roiv and miyut. You have to know from other areas in halacha, right? Sometimes you have a concept of ruba de minkar, ruba de ruba. There's got to be a cutoff point. I don't know how to put it in percent, but this is a good topic. Halacha vav. Kol davar shederach ashliach ba'isem akum limalech ba'y is another great klal. If I ask you to buy something for me, and you find something that's not exactly what I said, but you have a doubt, maybe it's included, and you ask the meshaleach, can I do this? The very fact that the shliach will ask the mishaleach means that it could have meant it. So that's included. That's the cutoff point. Oh, that answers your question. If the shliach wouldn't have even asked the mishaleach, that means it's already such a small minority. For example, that if I send a shliach to buy basa, and I didn't say what type of meat, what happens if this guy goes to the market and the only thing available is fish? I think here in America, he wouldn't even text the mishalech fish. The guy said meat, not fish. But if you live in a place, if the shliach would have a doubt, maybe he meant fish. I mean, of course, lechatchila meat, but there's no meat. Maybe fish means that there's a havamina. It's like a havamina in Torah. That's how we apply it over here. Because since haloich achalosh b'nei yadam, if there's a havamina that it's lashon b'nei yadam, then it's included. Ve'amad le'mitzasi elo dogim. Im nishba b'makom mizer inodem ena basar nesar af b'basar dogim. Well, however, regardless where you live, you can never completely disregard the word that you said. When a guy says, I make a vow not to benefit from meat, or basar, asar olai, you are going to be bas automatically forbidden in basar oif. Always. Basar oif is always included in bas. And in the intestines of the meat. And always you'll be permitted to eat the delicious grasshoppers. Grasshoppers are never included in bas. But let's not forget what we learned in the last chapter. We do follow intent. So if, again, the example is, I am attracted towards meat. And the doctor told me that meat from an ox or meat from a behemoth is bad for me. The guy says, oh, that's the case. I'm making a neder to help me do what I need to do. Then you know, only that which the doctor said, that type of meat, only that is prohibited. We're not disregarding, I'm saying halacha pedig test is almost the opposite. We have to know how to balance it. They're only the b'sar oif be'im b'levad, that is with b'sar dogim. Even if a shliach will be nimlach, because we know what was intent was, and when we know what the intent is, then we follow the rule, we follow the intent, and not the literal meaning of the words. Halacha zayin. Again, the first example we had in this chapter, I will not partake of cooked foods. So mutter bebeitza shlenis bashla ad. Where is that? Ad I have made it erased. Ad shekafsa eloshin is galgal bad. You know what gilgal? Gilgal means. Gilgal means to roll. That's a klal that I was taught as a kid. If you have an egg, you want to know whether it's hard or raw. You megalgal it. Now there's a turn. Does it turn once or twice, or does it turn? If it turns, it means it was cooked. Now, hold on. When an egg is called, what's it called? A soft boiled egg. It's going to be megalgal. But the Rambam is saying cooked doesn't mean soft boiled. Cooked means hard boiled. So he's saying when a guy says, I will not have mevushal, it's not enough for the egg to be mizgalgel. It's not called cooked. It's only called gilgal. When is it cooked? When it's hard. That is when it's awesome. Guys, maisa hakadera means food, boiled, mice, even lightly in the pot. That only included things that only need light boiling. Guys, anything that has flour, I'm the big chef over here, doesn't need a lot of time. Doesn't need a lot. Whenever you make schnitzel, you put flour in the frying pan. That's the meaning of maisa kedera. Also, when you learn the hilchas bichas anahenan, maisa kedera means something that doesn't need a lot of dish. It's actually it's not good for it. You're going rifois ulavivois, groats and dumplings. If that helped you, I don't know this, I don't know that. I need a picture to know what this means. Because since these are made again in chitim, that is what maisa kedera means. Also, but if he says mikol hayoyed likadera, anything that goes into the pot, hareza also even in things that need bishul rav. Halacha 8. I made the nadogim. Can you have the delicious yellow guk that you have in the gefilte fish that you find in these jars that our grandparents bought from Europe? Is that dogim? No, it's not. It's not dogim. I don't know if you make a bracha on it. But mutter batzir, you can have the brine. Ubamurias and the fish oils. That's not dogim. Now, you know what's interesting? I have stamakasha. The Rambam gave a klal. Like, what is this halacha telling you? If I'm living in a location where people use the word dogim for the yellow guk, it's going to be included. So why do we even need this halacha? I don't know. Like the whole Pedic is going to give examples. What it means, like you said, maisa kedera means only things that need a little bit of cooking. It's something that needs bishul rav. It's not maisa kedera. Like why? I'm just asking.
Is there an issue of like Ayin, for example, that somebody else sees this guy eating something?
No, because everyone knows the rule that when the daughter of halech or halech achaloshim miniyam, and the guy's going to be following
himself.
Yeah.
It's like he's telling you the limits of what the word means. That like there's no such thing as calling the brine.
Very good.
Dogim.
Could be. Okay, so shuki could be. In other words, on one hand, halech achaloshim miniyam. But what happens if people call a table a duck? Maybe that's what he means. Like maybe I don't know. Okay. I will not partake of milk that you are allowed to have the koim, the way, which is the mayim hanavdalim and achalav.
He also says how if you don't know the exact minhag, anybody doesn't minhag.
That could be. Really need to do that. What do you don't know? How can you not know? Ask. You're not living in a bubble. Yeah. That's a great example. If you were to send a shliach to the market. Maybe you're traveling. Okay, I don't know. Nodam and akoim, the opposite. If you make a vow not to partake of whey, then you could have milk. These are not two different items. Nodam and agvina, I want to have cheese. Ooh, then there's two types of cheeses. Kiyadua, to whom? To no one. To people, to chefs. There's salted cheese and there's unsalted cheese. And you know what? They're both cheese. Including the boat. Halacha 9. You have to see Tzemach's face learning these halachas. Allah hilchas cooking over here. Gewaldik. It's a good Tzemach.
So Rabbi, whey is not considered chalav. If somebody says I won't drink chalav, he could have whey.
But whey needs to be chalav Yisrael. The chalav we ignored, the Yisrael, daf ala mozai.
What about the powdered whey?
Oh, let's not go there. Let's go. Halacha 9. Hanoidim and achitim. So chitim, guys, it was very common. People would eat actual grains. They didn't have nash the way we had today to their betterment. So if a guy makes a vow not to have wheat, so what does that mean? The word chitim, guys, listen. Chitim means both fresh. Pasha, they used to munch on kernels, right? Or it means hot cereal. Hot cereal, then they would crush it. That's what they do, and then they would cook it. Both. That's chitim. But if he says chita chitim eini toyim, that even includes kemach and pas. You got that? Because chitim is not pas. That's the beauty. Chita she'eni toyim. Chita she'eni toyim. Guys, listen to every nuance. Asur ba afuyam. The opposite. And you can chew on them. Chitim, not chita. Chitim she'eni toyim. The opposite. Muter ba'afuy va'asur lachos. Chita chitim she'eni toyim. Asur ben ba'afuy ben lachos. Today, if an American will say chita chitim, he won't even know what he means. Maybe the Rambam is teaching us Lashon HaKodesh. Maybe that's his way. He wants to teach us, we have to know what words mean. Now, if people abuse the language, then you have to follow their erroneous understanding. Guys, dogan is a much broader word. Dogan means grain. Or the word tvua, that only includes the Chamesh Haminim and not rice. And not, what's this new thing that became acceptable today? Quinoa. Dug in the 5, wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. Das, to the exclusion of everything else. Halacha yud, yarok. You know what's funny? You know what the word yarok means literally? Green. So if you make a nadr against yarok, mutar badaluyin, I'll tell you why. Yarok means vegetables. So you only, you acid that which you can eat raw. That's the klal. Even though you can also cook a carrot, yarek here includes that which is also eaten raw. There are some vegetables that are only eaten when they're cooked. That's not included in yarek. If you say korishin, which is a leek, which is some side of yarek like an onion, then you are allowed to eat bakalap, either lutoyos or litois. Again, like why are we giving this? Because we're learning the Rambam. The Rabbi said to learn the Rambam. I'm trying to show why the Rambam wrote these dinim. He wants to tell you what the word kerushim includes and what the word kerushim does not include. Hanoitim in akruv, cabbage, also even b'mayim shenis bashal by akruv. Shaharei, because of the rule that water in which food is cooked is considered like the food itself. If you made a neder only mimei hashalakais, then you did not include the vegetables. You dafka meant that. In other words, if you make the nether shlakais, then you include the meshlakais. If you made a nether against the meshlakais, you don't include the shlakais.
So the second example, he's more the faret on it. Therefore, he can't take.
Not because of that. It's like we learned a few days ago. If I make a nether not to eat, shasiya b'chlal achila, but ve'ein achila b'chlal shasiya.
You're not worried that the vegetable's going to have some of the meshlakos on it. You pull it out of the soup.
I think that juice is bottle in it. Hanoidim and roitev. Roitev is gravy. Mutter batavlin shavoi. Min atavlin mutter beroitev. Hanoitim in agorisim, that was ground beans. Also b'mikvah shel gorisim. The thick sauce is included in the word gorisim. Malachi yudalaf hanoitim and peiros haaretz. I make a vow not to partake of the produce of the earth. Also b'peiros haaretz. And what am I allowed? Kameim and pitriois, which we say, all of these types of mushrooms and truffles that they grow from that oxygen in the air, even though they grow out of the tree, but they're not min haaretz. But if he says kol geduli karkolai, that's included. Also, nevertheless, they are nurtured. They grow. They don't derive nourishment from the earth, but they grow up upon the earth. I will not eat the produce from a particular year. Only peiros dafke, produce that grows directly from the earth. He will be allowed to have gedoyim, toloyim, ubachalav, ubabeitzam, ubagayzolois. Even though these animals, how do they eat? They live off the vegetation of Shana. But you didn't have that in mind. If he says gedule shana olai, that word includes everything. Asur bekulan hanoider mi peiros hakayitz. Guys, the word kayitz means that which you harvest biyodayim. You know what fruit you harvest with your hands without using a knife? Figs. There's many things unique about figs. If you remember that figs are also not harvested at the same time. Every day you go and you take new figs off the tree. So figs, that kayitz means figs. By the way, kayitz also means dessert, because figs, that was the big dessert, kates on mizbeach, but literally it means figs. Okay. See, the Rambam goes back and he says, through that Torah, not Torah. Torah means paskin the dinim. You're a poisek. When people come and ask you, follow the klal. The Torah, and let's go furthermore. The Rambam is not happy with this. He has to give more examples. Even if the yain is chodesh, you just squeezed it out. If you make a vow against Zaysim, you can have oil. But Abed, similarly, not that against dates, you are allowed to have the honey from the dates. Minasas vaniyos, these are underdeveloped grapes, which are normally not good, so they would make vinegar from it. Then you can have the vinegar. You only can't have those grapes. Mina yayin, you're allowed to have apple cider, yayin tapuchin, because yayin means wine from grapes. Mina shemen stam, right? It's the Rambam wrote before shemen in a certain place. He already wrote about this. He wrote that if even you,
Rambam's time on everything.
huh?
This is in my time. This is what Rambam.
Could be, but why would he write it? Doesn't make sense. There has to be more than that. That's
You can learn from that.
no. The Rambam already gave the klal gadol. I'm missing. I don't know something. There's some information that I don't know.
American people don't speak here.
I
So
know.
there is no b'chol zman in Rambam.
Sure, there is. You know, it has to do with what that word means in your place.
There is no thing in America. They don't speak Hebrew here.
No, in English, not in
Let's say I'm in America. I make another here.
Okay, so Shuki is saying that if a guy's living in America and he makes a neder in Lashon HaKodesh, I would still argue, let's look at the Hebrew-speaking people there. Go to the valley and see what it means. Atazai. Mutar v'shem and shum shemen. Min advash. Dvash means from bees. No, that's when people say the word dvash, you are allowed to have dvash tomorrow. When you say chometz, you meant chometz that came from wine and not chometz that came from these underdeveloped grapes. When you said yarak means that which you planted, and it does not include vegetables that grow in the wild. That's not what you meant when you said yarak. Even though kids who hate vegetables will not make such a distinction. They will eat none of the vegetables.
It's cultivated vegetables.
Cultivated vegetables. Mipnei shekol. Oh, no, here, no, 1 second. Halach Yidal has a cloud. When you live in a place when people use the word, they add a word to it. It was when they speak about sesame oil, they say shemen, shum shemen. Yerek soden. So the fact that people add another shem levi is the haraya that the word stam is not that. Let's go by halacha tezvav and later meksus. This guy wants to live like Adam and Chava koydem achet. I'm making a vow not to wear clothing. Mutter besak. He didn't mean a sackcloth. Ubiyiriyo, ubachamilo, all different types of coarse garments. Hanoidim in abayis. Bias includes the second story. Shali b'chal bias. But not in the upper. If a guy says, I make a vow never to go in the upper story, you can live in the bias. Hanoidim in amita. You can also not have enough from a dargish is like a little debt or a little footstool. You go to all of these fancy hotels, in front of the bed, there's like this little bench to make sure when you go in the middle of the night to the restroom, you knock your toe. They do it with the dafka. That's called the dargish. Also the dargish. Shukamoy mita ktana. If you make an edit from the dargish, then mutar b'mita. What's included from the door frame onwards? These are halachas that are connected to other areas in halacha as well. Halach not the shalei kanis le'irzu. So you are allowed to enter the tchum. Tchum is 2,000 amos, but you're not allowed to enter the ibur ha'ir. If you remember it in the Hilchas Ha'erev, and remember ibur ha'ir is 70 amos, I think in a third am or 2/3, that's 70 and a bit. That's already considered the ear itself. Halacha 17. Hanoide, let's get moving. Hanoide hanome b'nei ha'ir. What does b'nei ha'ir mean? Residence. When you become a resident, only if you live there for 12 months. If someone is living there but for less than 12 months, they're not b'nei ha'ir. But if you use the words yoshvei ha'ir, not b'nei ha'ir, yoshvei, the ones who dwell in the city, that's 30 days. That's the cutoff point. And if someone is less than 30 days, that person was not included in your vow. Halacha 18. I will not have water that flows from that spring. Then you can't have water, even from the surrounding naharais, which are deriving their water from this mayim. And no need to say you can't have anah directly from this mayim, even though now the name changed. The ain karin oisim el nahar pleni ber pleni. The ain malav lois shamayim nanadur. No one even associates it with the source of water, but since you use the words mayim from that source, in these rivers you have mayim asur b'kol. However,
did the Rambam base all these scenarios based on his patients? Where like why is it? Why didn't you just say kol kiyetze b'zeh? Why are we going through specific?
I don't know. I keep on asking that, Tzemach. Okay, let me say what you're saying from another angle. You see that the Rambam was very much connected to the people of his times. Oh, it's maybe the Rambam is saying, don't be a parush. The Rambam knew exactly what people mean. He was involved with people. If you don't mention the mayim, you mention the name of the river. I mean, mayon ploini, you not mayim, but you mention the mayon. Halacha 19. I will not benefit from seafarers. What does that mean? Who's Yard Hayam? People that don't normally travel are good. If you make a net that I won't have enough from anyone that dwells on the land, even people that live in the boats, you can't have enough from them, even though they go out to the middle of the sea, because every now and then they have to dock. Sheyard Hayam are those who dwell amongst the lands. You know who you can benefit from? From Malachim. Knock yourself out. That's the only ones. I will not benefit from people who see the sun. It doesn't mean that you can benefit from blind people, because you didn't mean from people that see the sun with their eyes. You meant to the beings that the sun sees them. If you make a nether using the words, I will not benefit from shchoirei harosh, from dark-haired, from the dark-haired. What do you mean? You didn't mean people that are, you included the bald. You included people with vaisahar. What shchoirei rosh means in that case are men. You can have anah from a nosham and ketanim. Nosham and ketanim are not called shchoirei rosh. However, if you're living in a place where shchoirei rosh includes everyone, then everyone is us. Halacha 20. I am making a vow not to benefit from those who rest on Shabbos. This is a beautiful halacha. You know what that includes? Not only Yidden who keep Shabbos. Kutim, we're going to go now with the Rambam that holds that even though they were Geirei Aroyes, they are converts. And then they are all Mechalel Shabbos. So even though they're not de facto keeping Shabbos, since they are mitzvah to keep Shabbos, they are included in Shofsei Shabbos. Beautiful. To make an nether against those who are Oile Yerushalayim. Who's Oile Yerushalayim? You don't look at the people that de facto go up. You look at all the Jewish people who's commanded to. Asabi Yisrael, Umotabakutim. Because we didn't want them there.
If somebody has an evidence that would always go with him, that evidence is not considered.
I don't know. You have to understand what if kutim imanavshach, like are kutim yidden or kutim goyim? Hello, I'm not b'nei noyach. Where do you think Avram Avinu came? He didn't fall off a tree. Doesn't matter. That's what the word means. He's not called Bnei Yisrael, not Bnei Noach, not the Halacha 21, not the Mizara Avram. It does not include the Yishmaelim. Because that Zera Avram means Yidden. Shenemar ki beYitzchak l'karol chazara. And Hara Yitzchak Omar liYaakov Yitn Lecha es Birkas Avram, which means Bnei Avram is Bnei Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael exclusively. Halacha 22. Not the Minho Arelim. You know what you meant? You didn't mean Arelim. You meant Goyim. And if there is a Yid who doesn't yet have a Bris Milah, you can have benefit. For us, even Goyim that are circumcised, or on the opposite. I'm making a vow not to benefit from the circumcised ones. Asur be'erle Yisrael. You can argue the guy's not a mo. No, he's a mo. Umuta b'muli yom Yisraelim. She'ein ha'ar l'kroya ela l'shem goyim. She'nemar ki kol ha'goyim ha'reilim. Kol ha'goyim ha'reilim. Be'ein kamen ha'seyeh shol ze ela. L'bishu mitzuva ala milah. U'l'mi she'ein mitzuva ala. Final halacha chav gimel. Hanoidem Yisrael. So what's included? Gad is a yid. He's included in that. But if you make a neder not have enough from Gadim, then you must be Yisrael. Hanoidem Yisrael. Then Asr b'Kahanim Leviim, they are included in Yidden. But if you make a neder only against Kahanim and Leviim, mutter be Yisrael. If you make a neder against Leviim, you mutter be Kohanim. Hanoidim Ibanov, who's not included, the grandkids. Very good. Mutter be Ibanov. B'chol hadvarim ha'elu nachamal kayotze b'hem din hanoider hayanishtra echad hu. Wow. Yashir koyach. What a great one.